Well, hi everyone. Thank you for joining me, MC Carter, for today's webinar, which is all about niching, or depending where you live, you might pronounce that niching, and the subtitle, Opening Doors to Your Ideal Clients. My name again, MC, Michael Carter in full. People call me MC. It's a long story. I'm the founder of Practice Paradox. We're a digital marketing and strategy agency supporting accounting firms, business advisory firms, and related professional firms. And we've been big on this topic since we started 9 years ago. And today I'm going to share with you, I suppose, the good, the bad, and the ugly of niching, and why it works for some firms and why it doesn't or hasn't yet worked for others. But along the way, we'll be getting feedback from you, questions from you. We'll do a question and answer session at the end. So ask your questions as we go. I don't mind how big picture and strategic your questions are or how detailed they are. All questions are good. And we'll have a couple of polls today that I'll ask you to participate in so we can get an idea of who's who in the room. So what we'll cover today is the benefits of, and I'll stick with niching, being based in Australia for the pronunciation, the benefits of niching. You know, does it really help to grow businesses? I'll share with you a model that I've written about called the 6 degrees of niching, which will dispel some myths for you if you happen to think that niching is, a binary decision to niche or not niche. It's certainly not an all or nothing strategy. What good and bad or weak niching looks like. I'll share with you a concept called buyer personas, which everyone needs to be aware of. If you plan to market your business well, you need to be aware of this concept, but being aware of it is only the start, and in and of itself is not enough. It comes down to the execution, and the devil is in the detail. So I'll share an example with you today of when that's done extremely well and the benefits that your business gets from that. And I'll share with you a strategy that, to me, and I've seen it dozens of times because we've guided businesses to do it, it's called niche portal partners, and it's the fastest way to generate targeted, specific, good quality leads where they come to you. So we'll look at that. Firstly, inch wide, mile deep. Now, today's webinar is designed for non-members of Practice Paradox, but I can see that a lot of existing Paradox members are here. So if you're new to Paradox, you might not have heard me say this. Inch wide and mile deep is a concept. It's a phrase popularized by Hermann Simon, who wrote a brilliant book called The Hidden Champions. He's an Austrian professor in German-speaking countries. There's only a few of them. He's considered the Peter Drucker, like the grandfather of management education. He's also an expert on pricing as well. Very smart guy. In this book, Hidden Champions, he analyzed businesses that had dominated their marketplaces for decade upon decade upon decade. And they weren't the brand names that everyone's heard of, and you probably might even be a little tired of hearing examples of McDonald's or Apple or Microsoft. These were ones that have flown beneath the radar to the general public, but they were dominant for, as I said, decade upon decade. And the common traits were consistent, and one of those traits is this, inch wide, mile deep, which means they were inch wide in their focus, not trying to be all things to all people, and mile deep in how well they serviced their customers or clients. Mile deep meaning they're doing things for their clients where their clients couldn't imagine ever going anywhere else. And their competitors were not only doing these services, they hadn't even thought about doing them. So inch wide, mile deep is a common trait of highly successful and sustainable businesses. There's been a lot of business books over the years, clearly, and some that get quoted a lot have been like In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters, which was big in the early 90s, and From Good to Great by Collins et al. And if you go back and look at those, most of those businesses have since failed, most of them, because the traits in those books, I don't think they were strategies that worked for a while, but they weren't long-term strategies. Now, hands up, you can use the raise hand button here. Hands up if you like the idea of transitioning from many low-value clients to one where you've got fewer high-value clients who have common characteristics. I love this Zoom platform. It's brilliant. I can see a whole bunch of people raising their hands there. Now, with strategy is how you win. the structure of marketing that we teach is the rules of the game. You need to understand that. And strategy is how you win. And there are plenty of ways to win in life and in business. And it is a valid model for some to have high volume, low value. But I'm guessing the fact that you're here, you are more interested in what's on the right. We call that a high client share business. So you can have fewer clients, but of more value, rather than be chasing more market share all the time and have lower value clients. And that's a race to the bottom anyway. I've seen a lot of posts in social media lately by accounting firm principals and partners showing even some of the big four are getting into that the low end of the market because of AI and automation, that the simpler end of compliance can be done a lot more cost effectively than it could used to. So you don't want to be there. So this strategy today of niching allows you to have high client share where you just do more high value work for fewer clients. And frankly, it's a better life, is my view, in that every relationship, whether you have a $1,000 client or a $5,000 client or a $20,000 client, each of those is a relationship that needs to be managed. There's an emotional overhead, if you like, with every single client. So I'd like to do a poll, and I want to get an idea of who's who in the room. So if this was one of our master classes, it'd be a hand raise, but instead we'll do a poll. And I'd like to know where your business is with its niching. Now, I'm a bit of a stickler on polls. I won't go ahead until 80% of you have voted. So grab your mouse or trackpad and answer either we have niched and it's working well for us, or we have niched and it hasn't worked for us, or we haven't niched yet but we want to, or we haven't niched yet because we're still unconvinced about niching, or we will never niche. And frankly, I don't mind what your answer is here. There's no wrong answer. This is just to get an idea. So 69% of you have voted. I am comfortable with uncomfortable silence. 80%, there we are. Thanks everyone for participating in the poll. I'll now close that and share the results. Okay, so 22% of you have niche and it's working well. Brilliant. So 1 in 5 of you, 1 in 10 of you roughly have niche and it's not working for you. 60% of you haven't niched, but you want to. So you are absolutely in the right place, because plenty of people talk about niching, but we've got frameworks and methodologies for how you can make the decisions that you need to make to niche effectively. And I'll share with you some of that framework today. 13% answered, we haven't niched yet, still unconvinced. And none of you have said you'll never niche. Cool. All right, so that's quite a spectrum there. And I think if you've niched and it's working well for us, you'll get some ideas to go even better today. If you've niched and it hasn't worked for us, there's probably very good reasons for that. And we can help you identify that, diagnose that. And clearly the bulk of you want to niche. And so you'll learn a lot of things today. And if you're still unconvinced about niching, you might learn some things today that what you think is niching is not niching. I saw a post in LinkedIn recently, and my good friend Paul Meisner from the great podcast, weekly podcast, many of you probably listen to it, called From the Trenches. And he was doing a rant, as he's wont to do, and that's his style of content. And he was saying how, oh yeah, niching's not the way to go necessarily. But what he was describing was one way of vertical niching. And there are multiple ways of vertical niching. And there's also what's called horizontal niching. So let's get into it from there. Okay, so the benefits of niching. So it'll give you a very clear focus to your marketing. Much of your success in business and in life will come from focus. And by definition, you can only focus on one thing at a time. And if you're targeting everyone out there with a heartbeat and a checkbook, as the saying goes, you'll probably struggle with your marketing. Likewise, if you are targeting small and medium-sized businesses with turnover over X who are good payers and good listeners, well, get in line, because everyone else is targeting. I'd probably use the word wishing and hoping rather than targeting that broad sort of audience. So you need focus in your marketing, particularly when it comes to the things that we help firms with, which relates to ranking well in Google, because that question then begs, what do you want to rank well for in Google? Which phrases? Who are you targeting? And content such as blogging, videos, and so on, all needs to revolve around who are you targeting because of search, the search engines. You've got to know who you're speaking to. So not just from those perspectives of targeting and being seen, but actually connecting to and resonating. Kind of hate that word, bit of a cliche these days, but people really feeling that you get them, that you're really speaking to their issues, because that gives them an instant signal. And I'll share with you some example firms today that when they come across your brand online, whether that's your website, on social media, or even if they just hear about you, they'll go, that's for us. We've been looking for someone who gets us, who understands what we do. And let's face it, there's plenty of words you can use to communicate a concept to someone. So whether you were speaking with someone who was, let's say, blue collar versus white collar, versus someone who does things to do with technology, if you're a good communicator, you would modify your language to who you were speaking with, and likewise your content should do that. And some businesses out there call the people that they deal with customers, some call them members or stakeholders, etc., clients, and that all matters. Now, apart from your messaging, when you're really focused with niching, you get very focused on your firm's offerings. You're better off focusing on half a dozen products, services that you do extremely well and that you can scale so that it won't always have to rely on you directly to deliver, than spreading yourself thin across dozens of different services, which many firms do. So you want that clear focus. You can tailor the packages of what's included and even how they're described to those people that you're wanting to speak to. And there are, today I've been talking about marketing benefits of niching, but there are so many operational benefits to niching. You can simplify and streamline. It affects everything. It even affects who you recruit, your recruiting strategies for attracting candidates in the first place. Testimonials that you have then will be also more relevant. If someone's reading a kind word that someone has said about you and it's on your website, or it's a Google review or a Facebook review, they'll go, wow, okay. If it's good for them, they do what I do, it's probably good for me. Whereas if it's someone from a totally different industry or occupation or age group, they won't really relate to the testimonial. But, some of you are still unconvinced about niching. So let's look at some examples. Now, White and Black, if you want to check their website out, feel free, whiteblack.com.au. Jason McDonald, I interviewed Jason at our masterclass 2 Thursdays ago about what's happening for him. And he told a story about how over the last couple of years, we've guided him from going, he had no strategy at the start. He didn't realize that, but he now realizes he had a very broad strategy at the start. He honed it, and then he got it extremely focused. And now he's at a point where he is getting 1 to 2 leads a day. He's converting most of those, so he's growing by 1 or more clients a week. And his average client is now worth $20,000 a year. That's not just year one, but year on year on year, because he's gone inch wide on e-commerce and Amazon resellers, and he's identified niche portal partners. He's got a beautiful, beautiful business. When I say beautiful, in his eyes, he's designed it following our frameworks. He's on a beautiful path. Embrace Accounting, the artist formerly known as Antoinette Palmer and Associates. Now they've multi-niched, and they're now they shared with us recently, we were high-fiving each other, so happy to see this happening for Antoinette, getting 8 to 10 leads per week through her niche portal partner. So more about niche portal partners later today. Otium Group. Now we're no longer working with Otium Group because Drew, who we were working with, actually sold the firm. But there's a case study on our YouTube channel. If you don't yet subscribe to our YouTube channel, I recommend that you do, because we put videos up there such as the recordings of our public webinars and other educational videos that we do. And I've got a video interview with Drew from the Otium Group there. So the case study there was about a great blog post that we'd helped them write that was getting a lot of content, a lot of visitors. It was getting about 2,000 visitors a month. And in short, he went from having a blog post that was getting a lot of very specific people reading it each month, but it wasn't converting, and implementing a strategy to convert that. Then his list was growing by about 130 opt-ins onto his email list every week. When I interviewed him 5 weeks into that, that's 650 new people on his email list, but he'd actually generated 5 new clients out of that at that point. And each client for him at that point was about $10,000. So it's $50,000 in new clients. So he was targeting very specific as well around mum and dad property investors who didn't like equities at all, but were uneducated around self-managed super funds, which he then educated them around. Consolidate, they were Zero Partner of the Year a couple of years ago. And one of their examples I'll share later with you, where they've got very distinct 5 different buyer personas that they're targeting. They started off with 4, they've since added a 5th. Advise accountants, so Consolidator in Brisbane, Advise are in Bathurst, and they're doing very well focusing on businesses that want to grow. They won't accept anyone who doesn't want to grow. And they're doing exceptionally well in the building and construction area. And again, on our YouTube channel, I've interviewed Matt Sharwood, the founder of Advise, and how they've tripled the value of engagement. So a new engagement, new client used to be about 2,800, Matt told us, for year 1 and ongoing. And now it's 8 to 12. So let's call that 10,000 or so average new engagement, because we've showed him how to attract people who want advisory and how to bake advisory into your fundamental offering, not let's get them on board with whatever we can initially on tax and compliance, let's say, and then later hope to upsell them. That approach generally doesn't work because the concrete sets in their mind. You can see that way over my shoulder, break out of your box, and our little friend, the running man with the box on his head, that symbol, that metaphor is about the fact that the accounting profession is boxed in a perceptual box where your existing clients and the market in general has you boxed. They've got you in a mental pigeonhole that, oh yeah, they just do tax. Oh yeah, they just, help me with my BAS lodgements, or depending what country you're in, whatever quarterly and annual lodgements are. And that's a box that the profession has put itself in. And if you don't accept that, well, then you don't have any power to actually change that perception. And people's buying behavior is based entirely on their perceptions, not your perceptions. So when you get a new client on board with your basic offering, you're allowing the concrete to set on the pigeonhole that is compliance. And it is harder to even have the conversations later about doing, management accounting, reporting, the conversations, commentary around that. So you're better off selling it right at the get-go, which we show firms how to do. Now, the 6 degrees of niching, I'll step you through that now. So niching it's a spectrum, right? So it's not to niche or not to niche, as I mentioned right at the start today. So there's a spectrum from super niching at the top, as you can see on the right there, through to no niching whatsoever. So super strong and multi-niching are all valid. Medium niching, consider that transitional phase. You're moving towards it. And, weak niching just won't work anyway. And no niching, well, you'll be competing if you don't have a clear focus to your marketing. You will, as the book Blue Ocean Strategy, with their wonderful metaphor of the marketplace is an enormous blue ocean. Lots of space out there, peoples. But if you target small and medium businesses and, you're not the cheapest in town and you're not the most expensive, etc., congratulations, you're competing with everyone else in what they call in the Blue Ocean Strategy book, the bloodied waters of competition, saying the same things about yourself, about why pick me, why pick your firm, same as everyone else. It's not a good place to be. Strategy is about positioning and standing out. It's not about saying you're better than anyone else. And those of you who are at Masterclass, one of the 7 big rocks that we teach is positioning, which allows you to take a unique position in the marketplace. And focus, niching is one string to that bow. So with super niching, I developed this model to get over this whole, oh yeah, niching is just where you pick an industry. Well, no, let's run through the nuances here. So super niching is you are solely focused on one niche. Your brand name, so the name of your business, the logo, everything about it is designed to speak to that one target market. So you're really hanging your hat on that niche. Your website, your social media pages, all have clearly in mind that that's who they're talking to. Your services are designed the way they're named, and what the services are tailored specifically to that. And when you super niche, you won't accept people outside of that market. So if you're focusing on doctors and a tradesperson or even an architect, someone comes along and you say, sorry, it's not a fit here, but we can point you in the right direction of someone that can support you well. So the next level down, strong niching. The focus is still on one niche. However, this strategy leaves the door open so that you can add other niches down the track. So the brand name and the logo does not solely say we only deal with these types of people or these types of businesses. So it gives you more flexibility. But the rest of those criteria still apply in terms of website, social pages, the services, and the fact that you really do accept only one type of client. Now, multi-niching, this is where you've got multiple specific niche markets. And the Consolidate example I'll share with you is one of those. So the rest of that still applies, but you're not hanging your hat on any one niche. You've got a few different ones. And for a multi-partner firm, and I've just seen a question from Jed that I'll come back to later, Jed. With the multiple different niches, if you're a two-partner firm, let's say, and each partner is chargeable, as in does chargeable work, of course, you could have one or two niches per partner, maximum 3, if the third one is related to one of the first 2. But, there's never been a hall of fame built to generalists. To stand out and to be memorable, to be remarkable to others, you need to be known for something. And you can't be known for lots and lots of different things. Now, medium niching is where the name isn't solely, and the logo, the colors, the branding isn't speaking to only one, but you haven't really tailored your services to that target market. So you've started to, with some of your messaging, saying that, oh yeah, we focus on these types of businesses or, these types of families, whatever it might be, but really you haven't yet tailored your offerings to their needs. And you're really just offering the same as another firm. So you've adjusted your messaging, but you haven't really gone mile deep. So you've gone inch wide in your focus, but you haven't gone mile deep yet in your expertise and your service delivery. Weak niching. It's really no niching in a way, but I call it weak niching because we see this from time to time where there's a stated focus on, yes, we have our sights firmly set on this particular type of client, but there's no evidence of it. So, the brand name and the logo, the website, social services, there's no evidence of it. And, the firm's basically accepting clients from anywhere, but they'll say, oh, yes, we focus on just medical if they fall in their lap. So one thing about having a strategy is first you've got to have a strategy, and then you have to stick to your strategy. Any frustrated coaches out there, if you've ever coached any sporting teams and you've had a game plan, and then in the heat of the battle, the team has varied from the game plan, that's very frustrating. You stick to the strategy unless you agree we now have a changed strategy. So weak niching really is more of a statement of intention than any execution that's really followed through. And yeah, no niching is just basically staying a generalist and no intention at all to go there. So some examples. Super niching. Medic, I think that's how Ravi pronounces it, either Medic or Medic. They're out of Melbourne. They operate nationally, and have a look at it. Their name, Medic. Their logo, it's a cross, medical symbol. Medical Financial Services is baked into the subheading under the logo. Comprehensive financial and accounting advice for all medical professionals. So this is super niching. And they really have tailored their offerings to speak directly to their pain points, because clearly not all clients have the same issues in terms of things they're trying to avoid or alleviate and things they're trying to move towards and aspire to. They're all different. But when you're focused in on a particular target market, birds of a feather not only flock together, but they're the same species, so they have the same sort of issues in general. Strong niching, another example here, Equus Partners. So that's Nadi, Elias, and Chris Nairn, also in Melbourne. And we've guided their strategy along the way. And Nadi has carved a really strong niche in cafes and restaurants. They're dominating that with SEO. He's published a book in this space. He now gets invited to speak at national conferences where owners of cafes in particular go to basically, learn best practices. And there's a lot of industry traditional shop talk, but Nadi gets put forward as the guru on stage to explain the ins and outs of running your business well. So he now gets inbound leads from multiple states. That's one of the beauties of becoming renowned for something online, is when they find someone and they go, wow, you're exactly what we've been looking for. They won't mind that you're in a different city or state. They really won't. And if you don't advise around compliance, they won't even care if you're in a different country, if it's just on the bookkeeping and management accounting side of things. Okay, some more examples here. Back to Antoinette's business, Embrace Accountants. So multi-niching. So you can see on screen there, this is their homepage. And by the way, Paradox Preferred Partners helped Antoinette rebrand. Antoinette came up with a new name for the firm, and we love it for so many reasons. It's so aligned with her values, who she is, her strategy of embrace. It's got some nice double meanings in there. But in terms of the design of the logo, design of the website, that was all done through our Paradox Preferred Partner Network, which are people that we know are damn good at something very specific, such as writing the content for a website, or designing logos and visual branding, or designing websites. And the site looks awesome now. Medical specialists, allied health professionals, building and construction. And that's three different ones, you'd agree. The first two are kind of related, but they're not the same, are they? Medical specialists and allied health, they have different issues and they speak different language. Sure, they work in similar buildings often, but they're different. And building and construction, obviously, very different. And that allows Antoinette to identify niche portal partners, so referral partners, and design content that really does resonate and connect specifically to those different readers. Here's a tip for you. When you create a piece of content, whether it's a blog post, an email, promotional broadcast or email with your newsletter, or a video, or any piece of content, audio, always create it as if you're speaking to one person, not a group, and know exactly who they are. And your target buyer personas that I'll share with you in a moment allows you to do that. And Antoinette's doing exactly that now with her marketing. She's speaking to each of those individually. Okay, multi-niching. So Prue McStay, who I interviewed on a recent Friday beer storming, if you haven't liked our Facebook page, do that so that you get notified when we go live with the live streaming. And I was interviewing Prue. She's based in New Zealand, and she was up on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland holidaying, and we caught up over a drink, and we're talking about her journey in advisory. And I actually had my beer confiscated in the middle of Friday beer storming. Scandalous. But that's another story. So anyway, Prue is focused on a few different niches, and in particular around salons and health and beauty industry, retail, and that is really starting to get some really good traction for Prue on that, rather than just try to be all things to all people. Multi-niching. So here's Consolidate. So with Consolidate, they were a firm that were already doing quite well when they came to us. And not everyone is, by the way. If you ever see us show examples of firms like Consolidate, who are already, 20 people, understand that we've worked with firms that come to us when they've had no clients, no premises, no idea. Like they were just starting out. And, firms that fit that bill that came to us when they were just starting out that are now very successful include firms like Growthwise in Newcastle. We guided their marketing from very early on. A Squared Advisors on the Central Coast. No, they're more Hunter. I mentioned Jason McDonald before from White and Black. Again, he's very early on in his journey. So we can work with firms. We usually work with the more entrepreneurial firms that are 1 and 2 partner, because once firms get to 3, 4, 5 partners, they just lose their ability to make decisions. Blanket generalization, I know. If you have a proper corporate structure where someone within a multi-partner firm can actually make decisions, then we can work with you. But we work with the more nimble businesses. So here with Consolidate, they came to us because even though their marketing looked great, it ticked that box. They have Samara on their team, who's a very talented designer that did their graphics, website, and so on. But Tanya had noticed, and she was actually at a Xerocon award dinner a few years ago, and she noticed that, yet again, the firm in Australia that got Xero Partner of the Year in the accounting category is someone that we'd done a lot of work with. And she called us on the Monday, and she said, MC, I finally joined the dots and realized one of the common threads with the people that win the Xero Partner of the Year and whose marketing is just working fantastically is Paradox. And she said, I just don't get it. What is my marketing missing? Because I don't know, and she was kind of like at wit's end. I don't know if Tanya used that phrase, but basically she didn't know what she didn't know about the marketing. And she went through our process. So she went through our 7 big rocks of strategy. So she and Rebecca White attended a number of masterclasses together with us and have gone through our process and our structure. And we've done a lot of services for them, such as SEO and blogging. And they were able to identify 4 different niches to go after. And as I mentioned earlier, they've since added a 5th one. And I'll show that example in a moment. And it's worked really, really well. Their marketing went from, I don't really think it's working, but we'll keep doing it anyway, to, okay, wow, we've experienced X percentage growth and revenue growth rate in that niche, and in this one, and in this one. And it kind of allows you to very specifically measure that your marketing's working. Now, multi-niching is if you go over the top and you list, so this example here, we've blurred out, well done, Caitlin and Brad here on our team, blurred out any incriminating evidence of who this might be, perhaps. But look at that niche list. So if you list 18 niche markets, really, in the view of the marketplace, you've pretty much got no position of authority in all of that. And I can tell you what's happened here. This is a firm that is probably savvy to SEO, and they've decided, all right, we are going to create pages on our websites that are SEO'd, the search engine optimization, to rank well for, accountant for, or bookkeeper for, or whichever sort of phrase, for automotive mechanics, for builders, for cafes and coffee shops, for carpenters. And like, really? You're experts on all of those? Pretty unlikely. Now, multi-partner firms can pull this off if they have built up not just the brand of the firm, but the brand of the individual advisors who are known as gurus in 1 to maximum 3 different niches, as I mentioned before. But small firms, unlikely to be great across all of those things. Like, how could you be? You're probably mediocre across most of those and really good in a few. Now, if at the moment you think, what's he talking about? I could service all of those and I'm great. I guarantee you are not mile deep in the way that you service your marketplace if you're spreading yourself across 18 different industries, professions, niches. It's impossible. So how buyer personas help you niche? So buyer persona is you first identify who do we want to target. Now, that does not just have to be industry. It could be occupation, because clearly the one occupation could be in lots of different industries, or it could be a demographic such as their age or their family life cycle stage, or it could be a psychographic around how do they think, what are their values, what really matters to them. So each of those things I just mentioned are different ways to niche, and you can combine industry, occupation, demographic, psychographic, and also your service mix kind of like ingredients. There's a limited number of ingredients in a kitchen. There's still lots of them, but there's almost an infinite variety of ways you can combine those ingredients. Same with niching. So with buyer personas, you outline a category or segment of your target market, and you discover through surveys or examining your client base, okay, we've got a good opportunity over here. We like dealing with these types of businesses or clients. We're good at it. You know, the demographic in terms of trends moving forward is that's not a market that's going to go away anytime soon. It's a steady market. It's not boom and bust, whatever the criteria are. And we give you very granular templates to work through this as a member. And you go, okay, let's go there. So once you're really clear on who they are, you start to define an imaginary person. You even give this person a name and an in-depth description of the facts about them, which is demographics, age, income, revenue, number of employees, that sort of stuff. That's just factual. And in and of itself, that's not enough. Where the traction and the effectiveness with your marketing will come from is drilling down into their psychographics, which is just marketing mumbo jumbo for what's going on inside their head. So their values, what's important to them in their life, what do they move towards, what do they recoil away from? What are their pain points? So there's a great principle in life. I've done a number of startup ventures, raised capital over the years, done an MBA in new venture management and startups, represented Australia twice actually in the world final of a business planning and pitching competition over in Austin, Texas. And anyway, venture capitalists, one of the warning bells when an entrepreneur is pitching to a venture capitalist is if the idea for this new venture, whether it's a product or service, is selling a prevention rather than selling a cure. It's far easier to sell a cure than a prevention because people are already feeling the pain and they will pay for pain relief before they'll consider paying money for preventing something they've actually never experienced. So psychologically, that makes clear sense. So you want to know what are their pain points. And that will lead through to what are the first jobs to get done for them? What are the low-hanging fruit that's quick, readily addressable early on in the relationship where you can be an absolute legend to them because you've solved some things that have been causing them, stress, stay awake type effect at night, uncertainty and drama in their life. And that's really important to identify those pain points. But on the flip side, you also identify their aspirations. What are they moving towards? Now, even though that's often less motivating than moving away from pain, you still need to look at that too. What is the bright light? Not at the end of the tunnel, not a train coming the other way, but what's that point on the horizon that they're sailing towards? And that leads to really energizing conversations that you have with prospective and existing clients to keep them focused on where they're headed, what it is that they want to achieve. So when you're really clear on the buyer personas, it's then really easy to come up with ideas for content. If you've ever struggled to think, oh, look, I know we should be blogging, but I can't really think of anything to write about. Whew, that's a symptom of a few different things. Number one, I'd say you're not reading enough, not learning enough, not listening to enough podcasts, audiobooks, etc. There's such a universe of information out there that if you can't think of something to write about, you're probably not learning much at that point in time. That's one thing I'll say. Also, you're probably thinking, yes, what article could I write to everyone in business or all small, medium businesses out there? Too hard. But if you're thinking through the pain points, aspirations, values, there's more to buyer personas than this as well. Anyone at the last masterclass, you've got that Excel spreadsheet to work through and answer in a very detailed manner all the different rows for each of those different personas. And it becomes really easy to come up with ideas for content across emails, videos, blog posts, also webinars and events, because every different type of content, written content, visual content, auditory content, it's the same ideas just delivered in different modalities, if you like. And targeted content is what works because people will feel, wow. One of the phrases I love hearing is when people say, oh yeah, I read your such and such, or I saw you speak at this conference, or I went to this webinar and you hit the nail right on the head. Love that phrase because it just means they're saying you really spoke to the issue and I 100% agree with what you identified as being the issues and the way forward. And that doesn't happen if you've got some sort of generic content going out there. And you will extract far more value from the content that you publish. One of the beautiful things about content-driven marketing, which we help you implement, is when you do a good blog post, as an example of one type of content, it's like a salesperson who works for you, who you only ever had to pay once, to get it written and published. And every day of the week, people will Google and find it and read it while you're off doing other things, sleeping, playing golf, invoicing, collecting money, whatever it is, running your business. And that just continues to work. So if you keep blogging, let's say you do 2 blog posts a month, you end up with this thicket, this collection, this web of content that you wrote that's attracting people to your business. And that's when they come to you, that's called inbound marketing. You're not networking or doing cold calling or please save me, those people that do those cold outreach emails in LinkedIn. I think the governments of the world should introduce, like what we have in Australia, the Medicare levy. They should get charged like an extra 1% personal income tax every year because they're just annoying. So with inbound marketing, you don't have to do that. People will find you and they'll come to you. So on screen now is an example of Consolidate's target buyer personas as they were when they shared this with me. As I said, there's a 5th one now. So Digital Dave, Savvy Sally, Professional Pete, Multi-Mike. So you give them names. It makes it easy to refer to. So Digital Dave, in this example, so focused on digital tech, e-commerce, people who are building apps, or people who are in the value chain, providing tools and services to people who have e-commerce businesses. Now, that in and of itself is not specific enough because that's still thousands of potential prospects out there. So they identified that in general, there was a gender bias in this market. So typically they were male. That's not to be sexist. That's just in their findings, in the data. Age 25 to 40, 10 plus employees. So that's a pretty important one because if someone's got 10 plus employees, they've worked a few things out. Clearly the venture is either funded properly or has gotten through the viability stage and past break even. And 2 million plus turnover. Pretty specific. The pain points there around access to capital, disruption happening within the industry, competitors, pricing, etc. Aspirations on the other side. And you won't be able to read it in this slide, but the little speech bubbles that are coming off the person there, on the left there it says, I need investors to fund my plans for rapid growth. And on the right, I want to publicly list my business and retire at 39. That's another element that's in the template for defining buyer personas. So what are the sorts of phrases that they say to themselves and each other on a day-to-day basis? Now, here's an interesting thing. When you niche, you don't have to already be the world leader or the expert in your area in something. You've just got to know that you're capable of developing that. And you don't have to go out and claim that you're the expert. You can just say, we are specializing in and we're developing services to particularly serve these markets. Because with Digital Dave, guess how many clients Consolidate had that matched this target buyer persona of Digital Dave when they defined this at Masterclass? 0, none. But they knew that they could really help Digital Dave because they've been involved in a software as a service startup themselves that have been very successful, and they're involved in that at a very significant level. So they got that space, but it just hadn't occurred to them, wow, we've learned so much over here in this other venture. Why don't we target those? So that was very successful straight from the get-go in terms of attracting prospective clients, because if you Google accountant for e-commerce business, accountant for SaaS, SaaS, software as a service business, it's really easy to dominate those specific phrases, which are called long tail phrases. It's really hard to dominate phrases like accountant Brisbane because everyone else is thrashing about in those bloodied waters of competition. You don't want to be there. So that's worked really well for them. Savvy Sally, I won't go through all of these in detail because we don't have time, but with Savvy Sally, so women in business, but again with specific traits, an age range there, 35 to 50, 1 to 10 employees, but they'd cracked the $1 million revenue for their business. And what they worked out is a way to incorporate education around financial literacy, not on the personal investor level, but on the entrepreneurial run a business level. And they put together a beautifully scalable offering that a lot of firms would be incredibly happy if, let's say, if you're a sole practitioner, with the revenue that alone generated in year one. Most firms would be very, very happy and be better than the upper quartile in the good, bad, ugly figures, put it that way. So that did very well. And then Professional Pete, Multi-Mic, one comment on Multi-Mics. So they worked out, they were already heavily involved in franchising and they had a lot of expertise in franchising. But thinking through this process, it's all about focus. They realized, actually, we don't want to work with the single unit franchise owners because, often, they might have picked up a redundancy or, somehow got funded and bought themselves a job. And if they weren't either aspiring to or already have 2, 3, 4 other units, Consolidate believe they couldn't add nearly as much value because, single unit franchise owners who don't want to grow really have bought themselves a job. And that has been wonderfully focusing for them. Now, examples of that. When they do a blog post, they know who are they talking to. Are we talking to Digital Dave here or are we talking to Savvy Sally because their issues are different? Even when a sales lead comes in, they now have conversations and a shared vocabulary within their team that, let's say someone takes a call, they put it through to Rebecca, who's been in the business development, the BDM side, and they'll say, hey, Rebecca, we've got a Digital Dave on the line for you. Well, that helps right from the get-go. And then the initial needs analysis, which sales process is also something we teach, how to have a very systemized, methodical sales process that's professional and efficient. So the initial needs analysis, that first conversation, specific set of questions that you'd broach with a Digital Dave versus a Multi-Mic. So once you're really clear on who you're servicing, like really clear, there's a wonderful opportunity to do the niche portal strategy. So here, portal means doorway, the traditional sense of the word, not some app out there. So niche portal partners are people that you can connect with that are in the value chain. They're already working with the people that you want to reach. So they could be service providers. So let's say other professionals providing services through to the same target market, but they don't compete with you, they complement you. Or they could just be suppliers of apps or consumables or equipment to them. Industry associations are often good, and sometimes within industry or professional bodies might be special interest groups where there might be, say, for example, young doctors who are just going through where they get together on a regular basis and learn things and do their professional development. People who are hosting conferences. Now, putting on a conference is really, really hard. And conference organizers just want to put on a good show. They want everyone after a conference to say, that was great, thank you. And often they're justifying the membership fees that their members are paying. So if you can come along and present great content that speaks to the issues of their members or customers, whatever it might be, at a conference, they love that. And you can get put in front of a lot of people very quickly. Others are thought leaders. It's a bit of a cliche these days, but you know what we mean. People who are renowned in a particular area of expertise. People who themselves have already carved a niche and they're already communicating with the people that you want to reach. And you can target the customers and employees of those in your niche. And it's beautiful because if you go out one by one by one, that'll work. But if you can get a relationship with a non-competing business or organization that can effectively endorse you and put you in front of their customers, members, constituents, whatever it might be, you can pick up dozens of customers in one step or campaign. Kirsten Hawke of Astle Hawke, who's since rebranded because this strategy works so well for her, to Business Buddy. She's in New Zealand. Using niche portal partner strategy, she picked up 22 new clients in one campaign, which there's a process to identify potential niche portal partners, how to approach them, what to basically say to them over the phone initially and then when you meet with them, and work out a win-win that is good for them and good for you. Because your goal with a niche portal partner strategy, sure, you want to reach the customers of theirs that you want to attract as your own customers or clients, but it doesn't work if that's your only lens that you're looking through. You need to think, okay, how can I help everyone in this process? So it's good for, sure, us, it's good for the end prospective and eventual clients, and it's good for the niche portal partner. So your goal is to make them look good and to make their life easier. And usually it involves educating their tribe on some issues that they might be facing in their business or financial affairs. So here's an overview of how to do it. It's a collaborative process with these non-competing businesses or organizations, and then you create the content together. So, it can be webinars, workshops, videos, blog posts, all of the above. You can end up doing articles on their blog. You can get them to do articles on yours. They'll invite you along to their workshops, or you could decide, look, let's put on a joint workshop together where we'll cover, to make this concrete, what Astle Hawke did. So Kirsten Hawke that I mentioned earlier, she went to a construction company where all of their subcontractors, the tradespeople, had two potential issues. And they identified that together, and then they ran two workshops, afternoon workshops over beers, to explain, okay, one was about structuring, and one was about that risk of being deemed to be an employee rather than a contractor, and clearly the bad issues that can result from that. And that worked extremely well for everyone in the process. Now, it's a beautiful day when you do get invited to stand in front of a room of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people. And they're all prospective clients, bang on your niche, and you've been paid to be there to speak to them. High five when that happens. Now, if you're thinking, I don't want to do speaking, standing up on stage, you don't have to. However, you can learn. And if anyone's interested, I can actually point you in the right direction of some really good speaker training people on the planet where you can go along and learn techniques, build your confidence, overcome any fears you might have. But if you do focus on educating, it's not a sales pitch. You focus on educating people about these issues. They'll then want to implement what it is that you teach them. Because at the end of the day, you're a problem solver, but people need to understand the problems in front of them before they'll happily pay you to help them solve those problems. So like I said, if you've got any resistance around this, there are so many ways to go about it. You might just do printed content. You might just do blog posts and articles that end up on their blog that get emailed out to their members. There's lots of ways of going about this. Now, Jason McDonald, who I've mentioned a few times today, of White and Black, he's got some brilliant niche portal partners that are referring him work on a regular basis, and they are the exact A+ quality of clients that Jason decided, through following this framework that I'm sharing with you, that he wanted to attract. Now, if you have any challenges, by the way, as a Paradox member, one of the things that you can always do is bounce things off us, such as, I'm thinking about this as a niche portal strategy. Here's a niche portal partner. How do I approach them? Or I approached them and they weren't that keen on the idea. It didn't go anywhere. We can then coach you and say, okay, what were the benefits to them of doing it? Did you uncover anything that you can help them improve or solve? And usually the answer is not. And then that can be addressed and you can move forward. Now, I'm going to, in a moment, do the questions. We've got 5 minutes left. But what I'd like to do is another poll. And this poll is really important for you because you'll tell us what you'd like to do as a next step from today. And I'd like everyone to vote on this because it'll just tell us, do you want to have a chat? Are you all good? So the first option is, let's talk. If you're not yet a Paradox member, so if you're really keen to have a chat with how we can support you with your strategy, digital marketing, inbound lead generation, and you want to go through our process where we have a marketing gap analysis questionnaire that you fill out, and then we have a web meeting to run through your gap analysis. There's no charge for this. And then we explain our different services, etc. Pick that first option. So if you pick that first option, you're not yet a Paradox member, but you've decided it's time to talk to Paradox about your marketing. Now, the gap analysis process adds a lot of value to you in and of itself. we practice what we preach. So most people describe it as quite an eye-opening exercise just to go through that process with us. But at the end of the web meeting that happens after you submit your gap analysis questionnaire and we analyze it, by the end of that, you'll be crystal clear on where your main gaps are in your marketing, whether it's strategy, whether it's content, whether it's technology, where the quick wins are, and you'll be brought up to speed with what our service packages and options are. So that's option number one. Option number two is not quite ready to do the gap analysis yet, but you want to have a chat. So if you want us to just send you a link where you can click on it in the email and book a time to have a chat, that's your second option as a non-member. Third option is, I don't want to be clicking links, just call me. So that's the third option, call me to discuss our marketing. And the fourth Let's Talk option, you might be a Paradox member, but you want to have a chat about rescoping your services. So it might be, adding some services, dropping others. We can always rescope the way that we support you. By the way, if you're not doing SEO with us, if you're a long-term member and you're not doing SEO, any business that has a website that expects the website to actually be helpful in generating leads should be doing SEO. Anyway, the last two options here for you. I'm a Paradox member and I'm all good. No need to contact me. And lastly, I'm not a Paradox member and I'm all good. No need to contact me. So I'm going to leave that poll going while we go into some questions. And let's see. So a few questions here. I'll bring them over. So Jed's asked, inch wide, mile deep. Does this mean you should also avoid all things to some people? Does this mean you should also avoid all things to some people? Okay. Now, Jed, type in some extra info on that. Or, Jed, raise your hand if you're willing to actually speak to that, because I can unmute you if you've got your audio connected to the webinar, and I can get you to share some light on that. The next question, oh, good. Okay, there you are, Jed. So what I'm going to do is I click this little button that says Promote to Panelist, and then you come across in a panelist, and we will unmute you. G'day, Jed.
Hey, MC.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
So what did you mean by that? Does this mean you should also avoid all things to some people?
Yeah, so when we talk about inch wide, mile deep, the first premise is stop being all things to all people.
Mm-hmm.
That makes absolute sense. But does that mean that when we do start niching, or having a focus strategy, should we then also be thinking, well, we don't want to do all things for some people? So if I've got a medico specialization, do I also want to make sure that I'm not trying to do everything for them?
Absolutely. Yeah, great. Thanks for shedding light on that. Yes, because you could develop quite a bloated service mix to that, let's say, medicos. Remember the mantra, if you can't scale it, don't sell it, unless there's some strategic objective for learning and research and development. But yeah, stick to half a dozen, roughly, a core service offering that you do really well over and over again. And anything that you're not prepared to develop a core competence in delivering, work out strategic relationships to refer it strategically onto others. So that's cool. That's a great question, Jed. And you've got a couple other questions while I've got you here. Does Paradox have a list of practices and their niches? This would mean we could refer clients that fall out of our niche to a like-minded business. That, my friend, is a great idea. So, Brad, could you note, let's start a Google Sheet that we share with members and that we share within the Facebook group that's just for members. Great idea.
Awesome.
I love that. Brilliant. Thanks for those questions, Jed. Appreciate them, because I'm sure others had that exact same two questions. Now, let's see. I'm going to demote you, Jed. We'll bump you back to being a standard attendee. Brilliant. Now, David asked, does niching start internally or should it be also be external, i.e. competition of other firms? Now, let's see. David Coots, if you're willing to shed some more light on that, just click the raise hand button if you're happy to speak to everyone. Because I need a little bit more context on that. Competition from other firms. So are you asking, David, should you take into account what other firms are doing, your competitors, and have that affect who you decide to niche? The short answer to that, if that is your question, is yes, because you want to find that blue ocean where there's available clients for you, but you're not competing against many, many, many other firms that are also going after it. But if you've got different info on that, send that through. And I'm conscious that we've gone a minute over, so we'll be wrapping shortly, everyone. Oh, okay, David, you answered spot on. Really appreciate it. Yeah, look, blue ocean. It makes competing and growing your business so much easier when you start to get, and I haven't mentioned this today, but very quickly, when you start getting, third level referrals. So here's how that works. Imagine a diagram, and here's you at the top of the diagram. And then the next level down is people that you know, and you're talking to them, prospective clients. So you talking to people that you know about you. Pretty normal, right? Then the next level down is standard referrals, the second level, where people you know, such as your clients, are talking to others about you and saying, hey, you should go see such and such. And that's good, clearly. That can be a great thing. But then the next level down, the third level referral, is when you are renowned, and that's when people you don't even know are talking to people that you don't even know yet about you. And that's exactly what's happening to Jason McDonald at White and Black at the moment. He's getting referrals and he's asking them, by the way, how did you hear about me? They're mentioning someone's name, and Jason doesn't know them other than they're in these circles, like birds of a feather, flock together. They're in the same closed Facebook groups where these Amazon resellers talk to each other. Darlene's asked, should you select a couple of niches right from the start of a new accounting firm? Wonderful question. And I'm going to keep going, guys, because that's a great question. So if you've got an appointment to run to now, I won't be offended, but I'm going to keep going and adding value here. Here's what most firms do, Darlene. I've seen it so many times and have spoken to so many people. When I describe it, they go, yeah, that's what we did. Here's the typical thing. Early on when you start a firm, all revenue is good revenue. Yep, you've got to put bread on the table, so to speak. And that can cause you to be a bit non-choosy about the clients that you bring on board. And I get that emotionally. And so what will happen is you bring on a client, and then all of a sudden you've got a few fees coming in and go, okay, we need to improve our onboarding or our operational aspects or get more efficient with our data flows, whatever it might be. And then, referrals start to happen. You're doing a good job. Referrals can tend to be quite miscellaneous because your clients know lots of different types of people, right? And then 2 to 3 years in, here's what happens. The new principal of this firm that started a few years ago goes, oh boy, I'm working my butt off. And my client base is okay. It's a few rats and mice in there that I wish I didn't take on. Very miscellaneous. Oh, I've just benchmarked myself in the good, bad, ugly by Business Fitness. Pretty much median. And if you're median performance, you're cream of the crap. Average margins, average revenue per person. And then you have to kind of unravel and undo that. Actually, Antoinette Palmer, Antoinette doesn't mind me sharing. That's where she was when she came to us. Lots of clients, low-value clients. Her staff were getting paid more than she was, working 7 days a week. Bad place to be. So to answer that question directly now, so you can avoid that, is you want to, choose some focus strategies right from the get-go. Because it will be easy to grow your business. You can do niche portal strategies and get influxes of new clients when you execute on that well. Okay, brilliant. Now, my team's asked me a few things about what's going to happen after this webinar. Thanks to everyone. 86% of you have voted on what do you want to happen after this webinar. Because, to know and not to do is not to know. If you're a perennial webinar attendee, you come to these free webinars and you don't take action, it's not going to change anything for you. But when I finish this webinar in a moment, the webpage that comes up has a quiz about your niching, and you can download an ebook that the team's provided that goes into some more depth on the 6 degrees of niching. So that's another little piece of content that's available for you after today's webinar. But the most important thing is that you've let us know what you want to do next. So thank you everyone for joining us for the webinar. Apologies, I've gone 5 minutes over. Thank you to everyone who asked questions, and we'll be in touch with you or not, depending which answer you gave in the next steps poll. So I look forward to seeing you in next month's webinar. We've got some webinars coming up with Practice Ignition if you're on their list. And if you're going to XeroCon in Brisbane next month, we'll be there. In particular, we'll be at the pre-con party that Practice Ignition are doing. So get your free tickets, free beer, free wine. What's not to like there? And come and say hi, and we'll see you there. But for now, I'll say goodbye and have a brilliant rest of your Wednesday or Thursday evening. Ciao.